anything we throw away we call waste. Now, our solid waste is any of the material that is discarded, obviously not being a liquid or a gas, and we break that up into two different categories. Municipal solid waste, or what we know as garbage, is produced directly from our homes. Industrial solid waste is produced indirectly by industries that supply all of us with their goods and services. The other type of waste that we have is hazardous or toxic waste, and that is going to be the stuff that threatens our health as well as the environment because of its chemically active, corrosive, flammable, or toxic. Here in the United States, we produce about a third of the world's solid waste, and we bury more than half of that into landfills. About 98.5% of that is going to be industrial solid waste, while the remaining 1.5% is our municipal solid waste. Here in the United States, about 55% of our municipal solid waste is dumped into landfills. We recycle or compost roughly 30% of our waste, and about 15% is burned in incinerators. Any of our electronic waste, things coming from our computers, things like PVC, lead, mercury, cadmium, that is considered e-waste. And with our ever-growing society and becoming more technologically advanced, that is becoming a bigger problem because of the fact that we're producing more and more of this e-waste. Again, the U.S. being the most wasteful, we produce more than half, or about half, of the world's e-waste, but we're only recycling about 10% of it. When it comes to recycling, there's two different types. Primary recycling, which is a closed loop recycling, and that means that the materials are just turned into new products of the same thing. Aluminum cans get recycled to become aluminum cans. Newspaper gets recycled to become newspaper. Secondary recycling is when we take materials and we convert them into different products. We use tire shreds and we convert them into rubberized road surface, or the rubber mulch or playground material that you have seen popping up a lot of places, as well as newspaper can get transformed into cellulose insulation. Some advantages to recycling: it's reducing our pollution, it's saving us energy, reducing our greenhouse gas emissions, as well as it's an important part of our economy. Some disadvantages is it may lose money for items such as glass and plastics. We currently recycle more plastic than is what is being recycled itself. So some of it is not even being transferred into another plastic bottle or another material. It also reduces our profits from landfills or incinerators, as well as its separation is extremely inconvenient. When we burn solid waste, globally over 1,000 large waste-to-energy incinerators are being used, and what happens in them is they boil water. That the steam produced by the boiling water is going to then turn a turbine, which is then going to produce electricity in our generator. Japan and a few European countries use incinerators for most of their municipal waste, as well as Sweden right now is currently paying other countries to bring in their wastes, because Sweden is using the incinerators to create the majority of the electricity for their country. Advantages to waste incineration: it's removing the large volumes of trash that we have created, as well as it creates less need for landfills themselves. We don't have as much water pollution because the trash is not just sitting there, as well as the sale of energy reduces our energy costs. Disadvantages: they're very expensive to build. They cost more than hauling the trash to a landfill, as well as it does create some air pollution, and it's output approach that encourages the waste production. Here's a couple images of sanitary landfills. how the landfills are designed is that a bottom layer of clay or some other synthetic material, plastic or composite, is placed on compacted soil. So we need some sort of bottom impermeable layer so that way nothing is going to drain into our groundwater. The bottom then of the landfill is sloped, and pipes along the bottom of that slope are going to collect leachate. Anything that's going to leak through the landfill gets collected and pumped away and taken to a treatment plant to be cleaned. After that, we dump our trash in. Once we dump our trash in and get a good layer, we then cover it with a liner, and that liner is to help prevent the eventual leachate from forming, because it's not going to allow water to easily penetrate into the garbage itself. After we dump the garbage, we then put a layer of soil on top of it, and then we put our liner down. You can see the picture there. You can see the pipes at the very bottom. The one thing that we do have to monitor is the methane being produced from the decomposition of all of our garbage, and so we have pipes that come out of the ground and that is burning off the methane gas. If you drive by a landfill and you see a constant flame coming out of a pipe in the area, that is because that methane is being burned. The North Wake landfill, which is the landfill off of Durant Road, is now closed. There's a picture there. Where we now ship our trash is to the South Wake landfill, and that is near Holly Springs, and this is another example of environmental justice. The reason that it is an example of environmental justice is because it is built in around predominantly black neighborhoods, and it's something that, even though they fought, the county still decided to put it there because of the large open space. Just like waste incinerators, there's also advantages and disadvantages to landfills. Some of the advantages are that there's very little odor due to the soil barrier and the plastic liner put over top of them. They're built quickly, there's very low operating costs, and it can hold large amounts of our waste. Some disadvantages are all of the noise and traffic created because of the trucks moving in and out to dump the waste. Large amounts of dust going on during the process of building the landfill up layer by layer, and the potential of the groundwater contamination due to the leachate not being fully collected. Hazardous waste needs to be stored long term, and we can dispose of this underneath Earth's surface, but without proper design and care for the hazardous waste, it has dangerous effects to pollute our air and water. Deep well disposal is what we do with our liquid hazardous waste. We pump them under pressure deep into a dry porous rock far beneath our aquifers. We pump them into the porous rock far below our aquifers because we do not want gravity to take effect and allow the hazardous chemicals to make their way into the aquifer. Surface impoundments are when we just excavate depressions, and these can be things like pits, ponds, or lagoons, and we put down a impermeable liner, and then we dump all of our hazardous waste on top of that liner and store it that way. For wastes that are not able to be detoxified or destroyed and things that we need to be able to retrieve, we put them in metal drums and we just store them in an area that we can constantly inspect them and retrieve them when necessary. Secure landfills are set up a lot like our sanitary landfills. We put the hazardous waste into drums, we bury it carefully in a designed landfill, and then we place monitoring systems in there. This image shows you what that might look like. We have in there different groundwatering monitor wells on both sides of the landfill itself, as well as an impermeable clay bottom Then inside of the actual landfill, we have another monitoring system detecting any leaks that may occur from the drums. And then on top of the drums, we put down a clay cap, a plastic liner, and then we have our sand, eventually our subsoil and topsoil on top of that. All of which to try to make sure that none of the toxins can get released into the groundwater or make its way up to Earth's surface. Here in the United States, there are only 23 commercial hazardous waste landfills. Brownfields is what we have when the industrial commercial sites that have been contaminated are abandoned. So old factories, landfills, gas stations. What we can do with them is, in the picture that you see on the right, is we can take all of these sites and we can clean them up and make them into things like parks, athletic fields, and neighborhoods. In the United States, we have 450,000 to 600,000 of these brownfield sites, most of which are in economically stressed inner cities, areas that they feel are kind of the out of sight area, where people, much like in Holly Springs, they're low income areas, the people that aren't going to be able to fight back. The hazardous waste regulations, we have two major laws to manage the disposal of hazardous waste, RCRA and CERCLA. RCRA, the Resource Conservation and Recovery Act, was developed or created in 1976 and then later amended in 1984, and what it does is it requires the EPA to identify all of the hazardous waste as well as set standards for how we manage those wastes. Our primary goal is not only to protect our human health, but as well as the environment from the hazards that could come from the disposal of these wastes. And what it does is it calls for the conservation of energy and natural resources, also a reduction in waste, the amount of waste generated, and environmentally sound waste management practices must be put in place. Some stats: 60 to 80% of the solid and hazardous waste produced could be eliminated through a combination of waste reduction, reusing, and recycling practices. 5% of our municipal waste is recycled or composted, while 35% could be.